Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video, and today I'm going to be talking about universally loved movies that I hate and why I hate these movies. Now, hate's a strong word. I I don't know if I'm going to say it's necessarily applied to all of them. There are for sure movies on this list that I hate. Some of them I just really dislike, or I think compared to the hype around them or the praise that they get, I think it's really unwarranted, and they're actually significantly worse than all the hype I've ever heard around them. So with that being said, I'll get into the list. So first, I'd like to do an honorable mention, and then I'll get into the top five. The honorable mention is, I'm gonna have to say, Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now, if you haven't seen it, it's a movie with Martin Sheen, a really young Lawrence Fishburne, supporting roles from Dennis Hopper and Marlon Brando. And I think when I saw this movie, I was just very underwhelmed by a couple of things. I thought that the camera work was good. The pacing is so slow. This is a 3-hour film that I feel like doesn't really start until the last hour. So the premise is Martin Scorsese's going through the Vietnam jungle, basically trying to find a renegade soldier who started a cult, and that role is played by Marlon Brando. The film was advertised initially with Brando getting top billing and it being portrayed that he was going to be like the lead character of this movie, whereas really he's actually only in the last 30 minutes, and that's when he appears, but he's actually only in about 15 to 20 minutes of screen time, and it's very disappointing and underwhelming. Um, and I like Martin Sheen's acting, and I like Dennis Hopper, and for the parts that Marlon Brando is in the movie, I think he does a decent job, but just really underwhelmed by the really slow pacing, and I feel like you're kind of just waiting around the whole movie for him, Martin Sheen, to meet up with Brando, and I just feel like it could be a 2-hour movie instead of a 3-hour movie, and for those reasons, I was disappointed by it. Oh, I also forgot some great actors that do pop up in this movie briefly are Harrison Ford and Robert Duvall, also in very small bit parts. Okay, so that was my honorable mention. Now to get into the top five. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for these, I'm guessing, but I'm sorry. So, in no particular order, the next one I have here is Chinatown. I am a huge Jack Nicholson fan. I was really looking forward to watching this movie, which I watched, I'd say, about it must have been like 6 months ago for the first time, where I really just sat down, focused in, and was like, I'm ready. I've heard that this is one of the greatest movies of all time. It's got one of my favorite actors in Jack Nicholson. I'm ready. And I was disappointed. I left with my expectations unfulfilled after going away from watching it. I thought that it would be filled with um, better acting for sure. I think that Jack Nicholson does good in this movie. Faye Dunaway does good, but they don't blow my socks off at all. John Huston probably does the best out of the cast, um, but the two leads are a little more flat than I thought. And I think the plot has a ton of holes in it, and it's filled with red herrings, which I think are always really annoying for a mystery to be just using constant misdirection and things that don't lead anywhere. I really hate that in a mystery. I think that a good mystery, it all kind of connects at the end. And this one, I feel like I could point to like three different things and say like, well, what was going on there? That didn't add up to be anything that related to the rest of the story or meant anything. And so that really annoyed me. Uh, I knew that there was a big twist in this movie, and I didn't find the twist to be that impactful to me. Um, I just wasn't as impressed by the twist, and maybe that's because I knew there was one coming, but it didn't do much for me. And I think that's a big hinge of this movie's appeal is that there's supposedly a phenomenal twist that's revealed about, you'd say, 2/3 to 75% of the way through the movie that's really supposed to knock you off your socks, and it didn't really do that for me. So this movie definitely fell short for me as far as the acting being a little bit more flat than I thought, the twist not really paying off as much as I thought it would, and the plot having a bunch of what I believe to be a bunch of holes in it. Okay, the next one I have on here is Star Wars. So to be specific, and this one is hard to explain, I think, because it's such a loved piece of work. And this is one of the ones that I don't really hate. I just think that like compared to the love these movies get, they're not that good. Um, so let me phrase this in the I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. Actually, it sounds bad, but I think that the modern Star Wars movies are really when they all should have been made. So, like, if you could make episode 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3 from 2015 onward, that would have been better because this whole series is so special effects heavy that if you, like, let's say you wanted to watch it in either, um, like, release date order, meaning episode 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9 or if you want to watch them in chronological, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The difference in special effects really hurts this series, and I'm talking about the series as a whole here. And if you look at like episode 5 or 6 or any of the first trilogy, and you compare that to the second, or you compare that to the third trilogy, they're so drastically different in special effects. It's actually very hard for me to see them as the same world. Even characters that remain throughout the entire series, like R2D2 and C3PO, they don't they look different in the different trilogies because of different camera work, because of different lighting, because of different special effects available. So I think that that really messes with the continuity of the movies. And I think these are movies that like having special effects be 10 out of 10 is basically a necessity. And when you compare like the special effects of something like episode 4 to something like these latest ones, I don't know what you call them, the newest trilogy with Rey, I think that they just age really badly. Like, um, I think at the time, in the 70s, it was cutting edge special effects, and that was really what drew people in. And that's kind of like what draws people in now to the movies, the great special effects. But if you go back and watch those movies now, the special effects are, for today's standards, really mediocre. And if you take away special effects from the movies, you're left with, um, I'll just be frank, mediocre acting from Mark Hamill in the movies, and a plot that really would be better served in a book series. I think Star Wars has such an expansive universe that I've always thought they'd be better in book form. Um, and so my main gripe I'd have to say is that the the special effects are really dated on the older movies, and when you take away great special effects, these movies are left with a complex plot that isn't really fulfilled quite right in movie form, and some of the actors are much more mediocre than we realize when we're not so blinded by cool special effects. Okay, let's see here. The next one I have is La La Land, which I went to the theaters wanting to really like. I thought it was gonna be great. I'm not against musicals per se. I'm not necessarily for them either. I mean, I like Les Mis a lot. I like other like The Sound of Music. I like a lot. I like musicals. I like some, I should say. But La La Land it just didn't do it for me. I fell asleep in the middle of this movie. In the scene where they're at the observatory and they're dancing in the stars, like on the cover of the movie, that's the scene I fell asleep in, and I don't think if this movie was capturing me right, I would have fallen asleep. I think, honestly, I think that this movie, the music is good, but I think that the plot is just so simplistic and really, I don't want to say bad, but it's just so overly simplistic, and I just really don't like it. I think, you know, a good plot, you can't really describe it in like 3 sentences, and in this one I feel like you can. Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone get together and want to be together. Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone pursue career choices that take them in different directions. Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone choose their careers over each other. That's the whole movie right there. That's the whole movie. And I think that they're trying to be really cool and that they present this twist at the end that, oh, she shows up to the bar and um like, are they going to get back together? Did they end up together? And the big twist of this movie is no, they didn't end up together. And in a movie where you have two choices, either they do end up together or they don't, It's not a twist to pick one of two available options. A twist is something that comes out of nowhere. And the supposed twist in this movie, the thing that sets it apart from a normal romance movie, is that they don't end up together in the end. But when you only have two options, they do or they don't, it's not really that surprising that I mean, there's a 50% chance that they don't end up together. So I wasn't impressed by the supposed twist and radical take that a couple in a romance movie doesn't end up together. I mean, I've seen it in tons of other movies. Um, so yeah, the plot just really fell short for me here. Okay, let's see here. Moving on. So let's see. One that The Princess Bride. I don't know what to say about this one. I just have always hated this movie. I don't find it funny whatsoever. Something I really don't like in certain movies is when they think they're great. You can tell like by the way they're being directed or written that like the either director or writers, they themselves think the movie is hot stuff and they think it's really good, and you can just totally tell the entire time throughout The Princess Bride that they thought, man, we are so smart in writing this. And I just really hate that in any movie. Um, and I don't know, just none of the jokes land with me, and I think the comedy is just I've heard some people say like, oh, it's like the thinking man's comedy, it's the thinking man's jokes, and I don't think so whatsoever. I read plenty of books, I have a college degree, and I just don't connect with this movie whatsoever. I don't get the comedy. I think that it's like really over the top and overly done, and it's supposed to be a parody of like fairy tale movies, but honestly, I'd rather watch a fairy tale movie than this thing, which is basically just like a a fantasy movie, but like with terrible special effects and like with jokes that basically break up any sense of story that the movie has whatsoever. So for those reasons, I just have never liked this movie. And also, the acting is the best performers in this movie do an average job. Like the guy who plays Indigo Montoya, I'd say he's really the standout actor in this cast, and Wallace Shawn in his what brief time in the movie. They do a good job, but the rest of the cast is just flat to me. Okay, and so to end this session of hate, the last movie that I have on here that probably most people will disagree with me with, but also probably most people that say that haven't really thought about it much and have just read what IMDb says about it, is The Godfather. And let me preface talking about The Godfather with I love crime movies. I really like Goodfellas, or I should say I love Goodfellas. I like Casino. I like The Departed. I like I'm trying to think of some other ones. I like Heat. I like a lot of those gangster flicks. Donnie Brasco. Um, but just The Godfather just didn't do it for me. I went in with high expectations, which I think everybody does when you go into watching The Godfather, which is considered by IMDb and some other AFI and things like that. It's considered like arguably the best movie of all time. So I obviously went in with high expectations, and I like Al Pacino a lot, and I like Marlon Brando, and I like James Caan and guys like that, and Robert Duvall, and I figured, oh, Diane Keaton's in this too. I've heard nothing but good things about her, so I figured, this is gonna be a fantastic movie. Number one, the pacing is painfully slow. This movie does not need to be 3+ hours long. It could, to me, be about 2 hours 20 to 30 minutes. It could shave off about 40 minutes off of this movie. I think that the big draw to this movie is like you're seeing Michael Corleone, Al Pacino, who goes from this reserved, doesn't want anything to do with the mafia guy at the beginning, to at the end he's like this guy that's ready to be the Godfather and he's ready to be a crime boss. But to me, that just didn't do it for me. Like I felt like right at the beginning, like within the first 10 minutes and getting set up with Michael Corleone coming back for the wedding and that he's not really part of the family, I could immediately tell he's going to become part of the family, because why else would they focus on him so much? He's going to become the epicenter of all of this. Did I see Sonny getting killed? No, I didn't see that coming. That was good. But to me, there's just something missing. And in a 3-hour movie, when Marlon Brando appears for what feels like 40 minutes of it, I don't really think he deserved to be nominated for Best Lead Actor in the movie. Um, I think he definitely should have been supporting, and Al Pacino should have been lead. Uh, he, so let me set something up. Marlon Brando's in the first 30 minutes of this movie, or his character's around for the first 30 minutes. He's really in the first like 20 to 25. And then his character, I believe he gets shot but not killed, or like he goes down sick or something. I can't remember. It's been about a year since I've seen it. And and then we don't see him for what feels like over an hour or to an hour and a half of the movie, maybe. And then he pops up for maybe another 20 minutes, and he's just like really old. And I feel like at that point he just dies off, and that's really the only involvement he has in the movie. And I feel like really he won this Oscar for the opening scene where he says, "You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding," blah, blah, blah. To me, that accent was really not that impressive, not that good. And I just didn't get what the appeal was really. I thought it was just very average acting by Marlon Brando, not really Oscar worthy. I thought Al Pacino did a really good job in a really different role for him when you think about his career of roles. He's very subdued in this movie, so that's very different for him. The supporting cast did really well, but I just think that it's just overhyped. It's such slow pacing that I got bored at times in it. And I'm really into gangster movies. I like it a lot. I like the genre a lot, I should say. But this one just too painfully slow for me, and I think that there wasn't enough like twisting and turning. It just felt like at the end I didn't feel like accomplished or like we had really gotten anywhere. I felt like in the first 20 minutes I was like, "Oh, Michael's probably going to become like the lead of the family eventually." And then I waited through 2.5 hours after that first 20 minutes, and then at the end, Michael was the boss of the family, and I felt like, wow, I knew this in the first 20 minutes. Why did I just sit through an entire 3-hour flick? So those are some gripes. That's really all I have for today, guys. I know it wasn't meant to be a video where I'm saying like you have to hate these movies because I don't like them. Everyone has their own opinion. I'm sure many of you out there love these movies, and I am probably in the minority. I'm sure there are movies that you hate that I love. I'm sure there are movies that everybody hates that I love. It just is a matter of opinion, and it's fun. And I just think that I want to make this video to point out glaring flaws in loved movies that nobody ever wants to acknowledge, and the reasons why I don't like them. There you go. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.